As someone who has worked at a startup for 5 years, I am fascinated by the downfall of MrBeast. You have this character, right? Jimmy, a young, driven CEO. And he has this one mission to be the biggest YouTuber in the world. And he will stop at nothing to achieve that goal. I don't know Jimmy, I don't know if he is good or bad, but I want to look at this from the angle of his company culture and the three main buckets of money, scale, and ego, because Jimmy and his empire just scream startup culture to me. So I started working for a young, driven CEO in my last year of college. She found me on Instagram, very startup of her, and in the 5 years I worked there, I got to see this company go through really all different stages, the good, the bad, and everything in between. From one location with a few employees to 4 locations in multiple states, a sister company, and 20+ employees. And similarly to MrBeast's practices, the company I worked for was no stranger to the NDA. I will say bridal is a very cutthroat industry, as you could probably imagine. While it is, brides, once in a lifetime special day, the stakes are just so much lower than, the stakes that MrBeast is dealing with. If something were to fall through the cracks in bridal, 9 times out of 10, it can be fixed. Compared to MrBeast, who is doing insane YouTube videos like 100 feet in the air. But with that being said, it was still substantial, right? When you think of a startup, you probably think of money. You either think of probably Google, Mark Zuckerberg, ping pong tables, free snacks at work, or you probably think of a sinking ship and, I don't know, the fire meme. Chaos. Their highs are very high and their lows are very low. There are times where a startup can barely afford toilet paper, and then there are times where you're all on a company retreat and it is awesome. That's just how it is. And over time, it becomes less like that. It becomes more stable, but in the beginning, a lot of times that can happen a lot when you're finding your footing. In a lot of interviews I've watched, I've heard Jimmy talk about how he's constantly stressed about money and is always running out of money. And I know a lot of people probably don't believe that or think he is lying, but I actually think he is being honest about that. It wouldn't surprise me if he is making an insane amount of money and also spending it in insanely horrible ways. Creatives are often horrible at spending money, and I'm sure he is managing it horribly. I heard that he fired the guy who manages his money, who is actually giving him pushback on a lot of decisions. I'm sure Jimmy is a reckless spender when it comes to money. A lot of visionaries like that they have this vision in their head, and money can sometimes be a way to speed up that vision. Seeing people at the top, a lot of people are coming to you constantly with decisions you have to make, and a lot of those decisions obviously just revolve around money. And so unless you have a really good team managing it, then you're just constantly probably making money decisions. Businesses just bleed money. Not just when you scale, but when you scale too fast and when you scale at an insane rate like Jimmy has. Are you kidding? All his businesses? Which leads me to my next point of scale. What works when you are one location doesn't work when you have 4 across multiple states. And that goes to say that what worked when Jimmy was 12 filming videos with his friends in his room does not work now that he is filming videos 100 feet in the air with 250 employees. And now he has to learn that in real time, trial and error, in front of the whole world to see. And it's not just the salaries that go into this, the people, who work for you and their families that they have to feed, that you're now thinking of, that weight, that pressure that now sits on top of you when you're at the top, but everything else that comes with it. There's just so much more that goes into a company and creating a company culture that I think we forget. For starters, you want people who work for you to work for you for a long time. You want to invest in them and make sure that they're there for the long run. Otherwise, it just costs you more money. And so you have to start investing in things like benefits, health, dental, vision, 401k, and those things are expensive. I mean, just think about if he does do that for 1/4 of his company, 50 something people, that's a lot of money already, let alone if he does it for even more than that. And that's just one tiny thing that contributes to the satisfaction of an employee. And those things just help company culture, you know, when you're trying to combat that constant worker turnaround. And then you run into things that you don't even think about, like if people are having personal company information on their personal devices and you want to eliminate that, so now you have to invest in work phones and laptops and other devices that all need cloud storage and their own Adobe softwares and insurance for those and hard cases and everything else you can imagine. On top of that, now you need new ways to communicate, so now you have to invest in email domains for everyone, Adobe subscriptions, seats, however they do it now, whatever other for CGI stuff, I don't know. You have to start buying more softwares just to keep your company running smoothly. Everything from employee scheduling to project management to payroll, HR, everything in between. And those all come with their separate fees, and now everything's just a subscription, and now everything is just add seats, unless you're like an enterprise and you have to meet certain requirements, and it's just a mess. The bigger you get, the more softwares you need, the more people are trying to sell you softwares, the more softwares you have to test out, the more softwares that don't work, the more softwares you have to test. There's so many softwares. In bridal, you're dealing with sewing machines and fabric, but if you're Jimmy, you're dealing with needing just space, constant space, and just humans in your videos, just humans, and you need to feed those humans, and you need to, I don't know, sleeping bags for them to sleep in, which is kind of like not really up to standard. You need humans. If you're Jimmy, you need humans in your video and all the things that come with taking care of humans. You need, you know, an insane amount of cameras and equipment. You need an insane amount of space. You need an insane amount of like just infrastructure you need to build for your videos, and then you need all your, you know, and then you need just like safety coordinators, which, goodness, I hope he does have that, because I've always wondered if he does, because logistically I cannot imagine working at his company. I'm just shocked that we haven't heard of an incident, but I guess it's starting to come out now. So if you're Jimmy and you need just insurance, the bigger you get, you just need more insurance. You just need more people to manage, just more employees. You need everything, just more, man. On top of that, you know, travel expenses for not only you, but now the people that you need to have travel, and all the things that come with that legally, paying per diems and hotel fees for them and luggage fees and all this stuff. And like his whole channel, philanthropy channel, is like in Africa, so it's just like, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine the fees with that. Like, I know there's deals and stuff, but still, like, that's just an insane amount of money. Building wells that just can't be cheap, you know, like, oh my gosh. And on top of that, he's in industries that are completely different from each other, right? Like philanthropy, building wells, construction. I know that's not fully like that's just like that's a YouTube channel philanthropy thing, but that's just completely different skill set and logistics from merch, which is completely different from burgers and / chocolate, which are, if you think about it, different from each other, because one is like a DoorDash type food kitchen thing, and then the other is like literally trying to become Hershey's and be on grocery store shelves, which is just like throwing money in the fire. Like, that's just like burning money, I'm sure. Even though he can market it through his own YouTube channels, I feel like that still would cost you so much. It would be just like throwing away money every day. So I'm curious to see what happens with yet his other newest venture, I think the $100 million Amazon show that's set to come out the end of this year or something like that. I say all of this to just make the point that it's a lot of expenses, and the things I just listed off the top of my head aren't even a fraction of, I'm sure, all the expenses that go into it. And similarly, when you have someone at the top who is working 24/7, who has to be there, like how Jimmy has to be, it all crumbles without him. Specifically because he is the face of everything. He has to be there. So his time is uniquely unable to be delegated in that way. That time that he needs to be in videos cannot be delegated. And so he just loses so much time in that way. and it's such a disadvantage. But yeah, when you have a CEO who has kind of no choice but to constantly be on 24/7, be working 24/7, no matter how much they love it, you begin to see them operating out of a state of fight or flight a lot of times, and that's just not good for decision making. It's just not good for anything. A lot of times they're making decisions, giving out tasks, making goals. From that state, it starts to set, that's how company culture gets created, right? It starts from the top down. And you know, that person that in the beginning who was just doing this because they love doing this and because they had that mission, it's so easily, over time, without you realizing it, starts to turn the people below them who are giving it to the people below them, and it just slowly trickles down that tone. No matter how experienced a manager is, it can still be hard sometimes to combat that tone, I think. It's just what happens when the person at the top now has to worry about the big picture and has all this pressure on their shoulders. One of the defining characteristics of a startup is the flat hierarchy, where there are different levels of management leading to closer collaboration and faster decision making, which means that many startups are flexible, innovative, willing to take risks. They are known for pivoting or changing, sometimes to a fault. And it reminded me of this funny thing I saw in one of the videos. It showed how on the Feastables website there was a $5,000 cash prize that someone can win for cleaning up the grocery store Feastable aisle shelves, and it just like screamed startup culture to me, because I don't know, it just seemed like an idea. First off, horrible idea, but it sounded very much like one of the many problems on the list that needed to get solved, where they found some sort of innovative solution to solve the problem, and because of that shorter, smaller hierarchy, it was able to get through. I imagine this could have been something where Jimmy had this idea, and because all the people that work below him don't want to disagree, or there's a company culture where you just don't disagree, then that's how that idea came into formation, where someone below just had to make it happen. I've seen many instances of this. I've definitely been guilty of it, just from being young and trying to find my voice and being insecure. Whether it was something stupid and low stakes, like a social media post that was a little bit too spicy that got approved, or my opinion on a new workflow, it happens. Which brings me to my last point, full circle ego. A goal that in the beginning was so innocent, to be the biggest YouTuber in the world, has now become a beast, play on words, that is impossible to tame, that you could have never anticipated. So let's go back to when Jimmy was 12 years old, first starting out on YouTube, and let me play devil's advocate. Let's say Jimmy was generally a good person who treats people with respect and likes to be a generous person. Slowly over time, he starts to experience money, fame, and power at a rate that most people will never experience even a fraction of in their lifetime. And as he gets older, it's like a hamster wheel. It just gets more, faster. You start with, say, merch, because that's typically what YouTubers do, right? They start with merch, and that was probably what Jimmy started out with. I'm not too sure, don't quote me on it. But now you want to expand, you want to be bigger. You start hiring people that are more experienced than you and your friends. Your friends have been there with you since the beginning, so naturally they are still there and they will be at the top there with you, even though they also have no experience like you and are also young. You've now hired people who are supposed to be experienced. Some go well, others don't, but you don't have experience managing people, so with the people that don't go so well, you now have to start figuring out ways to manage people, which is a very much trial and error process, and there's not really many role models around you mentors to go to that are helping you out with that. So you might fire some, you might treat some poorly, you might try to be nice at first, but then that doesn't work, so you start yelling to get your point across. You might try different tactics, whether that's scare tactics you might try, who knows. You aren't experienced, so you're just navigating these new experiences. The other workers that aren't managers see this, and it starts to give you kind of a bad rap. It doesn't create a good company culture. You start to have bad worker turnaround. But at the same time, you are exploding. You cannot afford to have bad worker turnaround. You are constantly hiring, trying to keep up. And because of this, things start falling through the cracks because of just the sheer amount of people coming in and out. Because you're just constantly trying to play catch up, you're not only the face of everything, you are the CEO, and you have to play a million different roles. You only have time to worry about the things that are here and now, the things that require immediate attention, that are urgent. You don't have time to worry about the things that are far in the future or even distant in the future. You really only have time for those immediate things. You also have a life, that you also are a person, a human that has to take care of their own things in life as well, that you even sacrifice a lot for. No matter how important it is, you don't have time to think about anything in the future with your business. You can never get caught up on anything because YouTube is an endless game where there are no breaks, no time off, and you are in every single video. You remember the money that you made in the beginning. It was great. It was able to support you, your friends, family, and allowed you to be outrageously generous to strangers, to people in your videos. You loved that feeling of giving back. That's why you did this in the first place, right? You loved that feeling. You loved making YouTube videos. And you wanted to do more of that. You have to rely on people outside of you to make that happen, and they aren't you. And a big part of it is training them how to feel that culture of giving that made all of this possible and made people fall in love with your videos in the first place. But you don't even have time to establish that kind of culture that would make it possible for them to do it to the level that you do it at. At the same time, it's not only that you want to do more good in the world, your ego wants more. You don't just want to stop here. Yeah, you have an insane amount of subscribers, but you've always wanted to be the biggest YouTuber in the world. So you're not going to stop here. Your ego wants more. So you expand. You expand to so many other businesses, all the things that kids love, burgers, chocolate, more YouTube channels, gaming, philanthropy, all this stuff, to just fund that one vision.
To be the biggest YouTuber in the world.
But all of that just requires so much logistics and people and manpower. You dub your videos in every language because you want to be the biggest YouTuber in the world. And all of this happened in such a small amount of time. I don't know how small it was, but as a viewer, and I probably should have looked it up, but as a viewer, talking like I'm not Jimmy now, but as a viewer, it felt like just a few years that all of this happened. And finally,
you're at the top, the pinnacle of it all. Amazon, you partnered with Amazon, $100 million deal. This is the pinnacle of everything you've ever worked for. This would solidify you, this will make or break you, because this is the moment that a YouTuber is crossing over to the mainstream, Hollywood, whatever you want to call it. This is the moment that will set the tone, that will establish the future of YouTubers, of influencers, influencer economy, all of it. This is the pinnacle. And now that you're almost there at the top, everything you did to scale so fast, it's all starting to come back on you. The things that fell through the cracks are starting to break. Everything you've built is starting to break. All the cracks are starting to fall through because everything was built and scaled so fast. You're honestly surprised it didn't happen sooner, but in a weird way you're kind of glad, and you hope it kind of crumbles because then you might be free.
That was just a weird, overdramatic, I don't even know what that was. Me acting like Jimmy and what his mindset might be and what might be going on in his company based off of, I don't know, maybe it's a projection of a startup culture. But I do that just to say this isn't based on psychology or really anything. It is based on just what I've witnessed and seen about humans and myself, my own habits of values and falling into different identities and roles and seeing myself on the other side of it. You might just say slow down. You might just say, Jimmy, why doesn't Jimmy just slow down and scale back? But I think it is hard when you're in an environment that feeds off of itself. You're around people that agree with you, and if they don't, you most likely won't let them be there for that long. And you'll let people that don't agree with you be there. They just have to build that trust with you. They have to earn that. They have to prove themselves. They have to, you know, have a strong personality, have a way with words. They have to build that, you know? They can't just come in and, you know, be like, nah. It takes trust. It's hard to change yourself. I think it is moments like what we are seeing play out that are what get people to stop, reevaluate, change course. But when you're in the whirlwind of it all, it is near impossible to do that. And I think it's difficult to stop when everyone relies on you. You are the talent, you are the CEO. Without you, all of it crumbles. I don't know Jimmy, I don't know if he is a good or a bad person, but I know that he is a disruptor. And disruptors disrupt things no matter what the cost.